Chairman of International Management Ventures. Sir is an alumnus of esteemed institutes like National Institute of Design and IIM Bangalore. His 40-plus year career spans marketing services, media, education, private equity, real estate, direct investments, and government sectors. He's also served the government of Dubai as the first non-national Director General while assisting with the development of knowledge economy hubs in Dubai. Sir, I welcome you to the stage. Next up, we have our very own alum, Dr. Sandeep Goel, who is the Managing Director of Rediffusion and Advertising Agency. He is a media entrepreneur and owner and promoter of the Moge Group. He was also the founder, chairman, and former JV partner of Dentsu in India and Middle East. He is also an author and has published several books. And he also writes regularly for the Business India, Business Standard, Campaign India, and Exchange for Media. Sir, I welcome you to the stage. I would now like to invite our respected Dean Sir to join the esteemed guests on the stage. I would now like Dean Sir.
Good afternoon. It's a great honor, and this is a very auspicious occasion. The darkness, accumulated darkness over a million years can't destroy the light of a single candle. And flowers may fade, but their perfume lives on forever. Nitin ji will live forever in FMS and in our hearts. We gathered here in his memory. We are so glad that Mrs. Puri is here. We're really grateful to her. His sister, ma'am, is here, and she also is from Delhi University. She was just telling me, ma'am was telling me that she did her B.Ed from the CIE, which is one of the oldest education centers in the country. And I would like to thank Professor Singla, above all Sandeep Goyal ji, the Managing Director at Rediffusion and a batchmate of Nitin ji. And of course, our guests of honor, Sanjay Gupta ji, Avishesha, Bhojani, and other batchmates of Nitin ji, including Arun Gupta ji, who's there in the audience, for making this event possible. Memorial lectures are special, and this is the inaugural memorial lecture. Bodies come and go, right? But the spirit is eternal. I mean, if there is one distinct core competence of India, right, in strategy, language, we're always talking about core competencies and so on. If you ask any foreigner what India is synonymous with, earlier they would have said snake charmers, then they would have said the Taj Mahal. Now they might say IT professionals in companies like Google, with Google being headed in the US by an Indian. And I've been just told by Sanjay ji, we have, apart from the US, the largest concentration of workers in Google is in India. Almost 10,000 people here, another 70,000 in various consulting companies working with Google. And yet, the essence of India lies beyond this. It's that which sustains all this. And the essence of India is to say that the spirit is eternal. Right? In that spirit, there is consciousness and there is intelligence. We've been talking as to how we're going to give you projects anymore, given this chat GPT that's come along. Yes, it's a scary thought. I was just talking to Sanjay ji कि भाई अब क्या करें? पहले तो कट एंड पेस्ट से काम चल जाता था, फिर हमने कहा हाथ से लिख दो. अब तो हाथ से लिखने का भी मतलब नहीं है, आप लोगों ने तो बस चैट जीपीटी उसके हाथ से लिख दोगे. But intelligence and artificial intelligence still remain distinct creatures, no matter what the advances in AI. The eye needs consciousness. No machine can respond to stimuli, but no machine is conscious. In fact, we don't even have a clue as to what consciousness is. If you go to the Google page or Wikipedia and look at what is consciousness, all of Wikipedia is a product of human consciousness, all of it. Everything on Google is a product of human consciousness. But when you ask the question, what is consciousness? There's half a page and it says, essentially, we do not have an iota of an idea. This is an eternal mystery. So Nitin's spirit is consciousness, which is eternal. I'm sure he's here today amongst all of us. And to that, we are here to pay salute. I have a number of my faculty members here. Harsh is here, Professor Kavita here. We have just recruited 21 new faculty, or 23 new faculty, of which 16 have joined. I've been telling my guests all about it. So we are infusing youth, yes, in this place. A lot of us, of course, we're all young at heart. Don't get me wrong. I mean, my favorite quote is, I actually saw somebody, in a t-shirt saying, the t-shirt said, I was feeling tired yesterday, I'm feeling tired today, I'm retired. Retired. So you can retire at 21, you may never retire. Professor Singla, can you believe he's retired? No way. A lot of people here have been taught by Professor Singla, and he remains as young at heart as he ever was. So it is to pay tribute to that eternal in us that we have this lecture. And the topic is very, very interesting. It's about sports. The Lord Krishna said all life is a sport, लीला है. सारा जीवन एक लीला है. तो ये जो हम बैठे हैं, बात कर रहे हैं, गपशप कर रहे हैं, खाएंगे, पिएंगे, कुछ आप FMS से कोई प्लेसमेंट्स हो जाएगी, then your children will grow up and you'll put them into FMS again, right? And then again, you might come when they are here in the auditorium, you might be there with them. लीला ही तो है. So, इस लीला को seriously खेलना. If you want to play badminton, if you play trivially, I notice people playing badminton. हम लोग इधर facilities नहीं है, but a lot of you are playing badminton these days. If you play trivially, there is no fun. Yes, you must play hard. On the other hand, you must remember it's a game, it's a sport, it's a leela. If you get your ego involved, then there's war. Then there's Russia-Ukraine war. So if life is a sport, you work hard at it, play hard, have great fun, crack the CAT exam, join places with great placements, move on, but as long as sport, and you're working hard at it, it's great fun. The moment you take yourself too seriously and forget it's a sport, forget it's a leela, then it's war. So it is in that context that we're having this lecture, and nobody better than Sanjay ji to deliver the inaugural lecture. So this will happen, it's an yearly event, this will happen year after year, and I'm sure it'll be a grand success. And thanks to everyone who's contributed to make it a great success. And a special thanks to ma'am for coming along to grace this occasion. And of course, Nitin ji's sister. Thank you.
May I now invite to the podium Dr.
Whatever is more appropriate. So you'll have to excuse me. Well, first and foremost, I'm graduate from FMS once. I have had the privilege of graduating from FMS twice. So I was from the MBA 84 batch, and I came back then to do my PhD. And so I was a second time graduate in 2017 when I finished my PhD. More importantly, I was telling a lot of your colleagues from the MSA that I have the proud privilege of standing here today, 40 years after being the GSEC of my batch, way back in 1980. I'm not going to take very long. Nitin was my classmate. He was everything that I wasn't. He was a Stephanian, I came from Boondocks. He was a national TD champion. And to be honest, in the years we were at FMS, I didn't really get to know him too well. But God has his ways, and over the years we became friends and then very close friends. And so when he passed away 3 years ago, it really hurt me. I felt really sad, and I thought we must do something to commemorate and perpetuate his memory. So I had a few discussions with some of my classmates from my batch, and we came up with this idea of having the Nitin Puri Memorial Lecture. I then ran it past Radhika, his wife, who was more than supportive of the idea. And then, as has been my want for the last many years, my go-to man for FMS, Professor M.L. Singla. So I called Singla sir and I said that we want to hold this lecture. He said, I think it's a damn good idea. and I will discuss it with the dean. Now, unfortunately, I didn't get to meet the Honorable Dean till this morning, so I left it in the safe hands of Professor Singla to discuss it with the dean, who enthusiastically supported it, and the idea of this lecture became a reality. Now, the first and important question was, who should be the first speaker? And in my mind, I didn't even have to think about it. I was very clear, the inaugural lecture must be delivered by my friend and one of India's foremost marketing experts, management experts, Sanjay Gupta. When I approached Sanjay and I requested him to deliver the first lecture, he very kindly agreed. And when we got discussing on what should Sanjay be speaking on, considering that Nitin was an ace sportsman, we agreed that Sanjay would come and speak today on sports. Now, why Sanjay in sports? Because as he was introduced earlier, Sanjay was the COO, then the managing director of Star for over a decade. And during his time, Star acquired most of the cricketing rights from the ICC. So if there is someone who knows sports backwards literally, it is Sanjay. So the topic has been chosen keeping in mind that sports is a very, very important area of marketing investment, marketing acumen, and marketing impact. Also because nobody knows the subject better than he does. I then thought we must also have a guest of honor. And again, I didn't have to think beyond the one and only choice, Bhojani. Avi was Nitin's guru, mentor, friend, and Avi is one of the world's most successful advertising people. He's flown in this morning from Dubai, and as soon as we finish his lecture today, he's headed back. So a trip all the way from Dubai and back just for Nitin. So one round of applause for Avi again. I'm hoping the Nitin Puri Memorial Lecture will become an annual feature on the FMS calendar. And as they say, well begun is half done. And with Sanjay here, I'm sure we're off to a flying start. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I would now like to invite the keynote speaker for the evening, Mr. Sanjay Gupta, to address the gathering.
See all of you, the bright young minds at FMS. As the Dean sir said, that India is making great strides today. When you think in the world, you think of India first. When you think of technology, you think of India first. And I remember our CEO Sundar Pichai, who was here last month, talks about very fondly that when you solve for India, you solve for the world. So that's the power of India. India is going to power the world, I believe, in the next 2 decades. And it's India's decade, as our Prime Minister calls it. It's your decade, or your 2 decades as young students. So I do think each one of you sitting here will really shape the next step of India. And congratulations as you pass out of this college, I think one of the most premier institutes, and all the best to you in your career as you move ahead. I am really excited that you'll make a huge impact. So first, a big round of applause for all of you for being here and studying with me. I'm going to start with a small exercise for you to really think about. I'm going to talk about sports. I think before I jump into the conversation around sports, which I'm really, really excited about to do, I want you to close your eyes, and I'll give you a few seconds to think about I want to think about what is greatness and what does it mean to you? What is greatness and what does it mean to each one of you personally? So if you can just reflect for a few seconds before I jump in to talk about it.
Greatness. It's just something we come to believe that greatness is a gift reserved for a chosen few, for prodigies. Greatness is not some rare DNA strand. It's not some precious thing. Greatness is not all you need to us than breathing. We're all capable of it. All of us.
We are celebrating one of the great men that we talked about, Mr. Nitin Puri. So around who has been not only a pioneer advertising man, but a man who was at the cusp of sports excellence. And I think that today's topic that I've chosen to talk about is something which is very close to my heart. Sports as a brand, as a business, how it impacts society, and how it inspires a brilliant imagination. I also want to, before I jump into it, thank Dr. Goel, who nudged me into speaking at this inaugural memorial lecture. And I must say, besides being a dear friend, he inspires me, both with his passion and his curiosity. So thank you, Dr. Goel, for what you do and for the inspiration that you provide. Area like Archipuram, you would have seen that school. It's an experimental school which was started by NDMC. And the big thing for me in late 70s, early 80s was to get the facilities to play sports. It was not very easily accessible at that moment. So I started to play hockey. I passionately played and I thought I played reasonably well. But as you enter class 9, me and my parents definitely, had to make a choice. Do I study or do I play sports? For whatever reasons, I chose that I must get into studies and spend time there. But that's something which has been very close to my heart. The sports and the idea of sports. Many years later, I got to work with Star. And at Star, we took on the challenge as a team to build a sports franchise. And I think that's something which has shaped a lot of my thinking, understanding on building businesses and brands deeply. And I do think sport is something which is really core to the foundation of a country. It can really build character in society. So as I was talking in the beginning, that we're going to look at the next decade or 2 decades of great growth through technology. I think sports will be the foundation on which India will be the next leap in its journey. So let me talk about how we think of sports. This is what we think of sports. When you think of sport, we think of a match. And I'm sure a lot of you would have been in a cricket stadium and watched a match. Scoreboards and numbers come to mind foremost when you enter a stadium and watch a match. But you'll be surprised to know that, or maybe you won't be, that only 1.5 crore Indians had ever been to a sports stadium to watch a live match. 1% or less than 1% people. So it's still a privilege of a few to watch a match. Most of the people end up enjoying a match on a television and more in the last few years on a mobile phone. But the challenge for India, or the opportunity for India, which has very large numbers, we are 140 crore people, there are many people who play actively. There are, all of you I'm sure who are health conscious, find some time to play. There are 32 crore such Indians who are playing actively in sports. And what we call fans, there are roughly around 13 crore fans. We define fans for deeply engaged with sport. But the reality of the country is that, and I'm sure some of you would have this Hindi, same day as a country, we spend only 5 minutes on an average for India playing in a day, or 5 minutes engaging with sports. It's a really small number. You compare it to any other market in the world. People spend an hour playing and watching, and sports is more than understand how do they think about sports. So I remember sitting with a mother with a 10-year-old son, and she was talking about how he has to study very hard to excel in school and therefore earn a living. And I asked her, so when he feels tired, what does he do? How does he refresh his mind? She said, जब थक जाते हैं तो हम बोलते हैं कि refresh करने के लिए TV देख लीजिए. In some way I was delighted that she was talking about watching television, but in some way that really underlines the challenge of India, that we give sports so much of importance. We really miss out on the opportunity to engage in sports deeply in India. That's set to change. That's set to change because I think more and more people, young people are on both on the back of health and passion, get into sports deeply. There's investment being made by many companies. There's government push which is there. So I think that's set to change very, very dramatically as we move forward. And I do think sports, as we talked about, today is a small business. But I do think as we think of the future, from a $3.5 billion, if I look at 2050, that's what some of you would foundation for the country, it can be a really big business. And it will be a really big business in India. So some of you, if you find time and energy to participate, shape, energize sports, it will be a blessing, I would say. So think about how you can really drive in a very meaningful manner the sports. Sorry, I'm struggling with. Companies, where people worry, can I really trust the people who create these businesses? But there is one area where trust is increasing over the last 2 decades. And that's the power of sports icons, sports personalities, and sports in general. And I'm sure some of you experienced in last year, when you would have participated or seen, which is bigger than any religion in the world. So that's something really powerful about sports. It's the biggest unifier. I must say, some of you would have watched, and I was there in Star at that time, when 2015 World Cup happened. India did win the final. Actually, India got eliminated in the semi-final. But in 2014, the general elections that happened in India. And as a country with the largest democracy in the world, and we go and participate and vote, the number of people who watched the World Cup in 2015 was more than the number of people who went and voted in 2014 election. So that's the power of sports. That's there in India. And we are still, as I said earlier, a small business even now. It's not big enough from a global standards and from the country standard. So it is going to grow. Within that, I think I said sports is a big unifier. Rivalries in sports are really important. And this is a rivalry I'm sure all of you have seen, participated, enjoyed, or fretted about, whichever way and whichever side you support or not support. And I think how sports can actually bring people together. I have an interesting ad to share, which really became the sensation when it came out in 2015 for the World Cup. And a team sitting at Star created this communication, which is called Mauka Mauka. Let's have a look.
What I mean about Javed and the opposition. He never stops. It's not my...
आज चल के दर पे आया है मौका
It's a thing which people trust. So it's a very special place, I think, place in the humanity and for a country. And let me now pull back and talk about my learnings on building a sports business and a sports brand. And I have 4 key thoughts I want to share, which have really moved Star Sports as a business and a brand in India. Let me start for the first one. I think the most important thing, and I'm sure you've studied it in classes of marketing, that when you want to change consumer behavior, you need to change the attitudes of people. And fundamentally what it requires is inspiring people to do, how to change what they think and therefore what they do. In sports, the interesting challenge was that most of the parents worry that their children should be very careful how much time do they spend playing. Equally, children want to play. Actually, children enjoy playing a lot. How do you inspire children and parents both to find the time and find the energy to invest behind sports? And this is an idea which came in partnership with the government to say, can we partner together and inspire children to play? And that's how was born the Khelo India School Games in 2018. It started in 2017. Fundamentally, it meant bringing different schools together and kids to participate. In the first season of Khelo India School Games, close to 3,500 kids participated in 16 sports. They were given 200 medals. Roughly 10 crore people in this country watched it on television or mobile screens. But the most important moments were when these kids went back, and this happened in Delhi, when they went back to their villages and schools, and a large number of winners came from small towns and villages. Whole town came back or came to receive them at the railway station. It changed the way people started appreciating and enjoying sports. I have an audio visual to share which really captures the thought behind
खेलकूद है उसके डेवलपमेंट का लेवल बहुत अलग होता है।
हर गांव गली से, चप्पे चप्पे से, हर प्रदेश से निकलेंगे खिलाड़ी।
आओ देश की नींव मजबूत करते हैं।
चलो हाथों के साथ साथ पैरों से भी फ्यूचर लिखना सीखते हैं।
जो खेलना चाहो वो खेलो।
क्योंकि खेलेंगे नहीं तो पता कैसे लगेगा कि आपके पास टैलेंट है कि नहीं।
खेलोगे कूदोगे,
खेलोगे कूदोगे तो बनोगे लाजवाब। आ गया है खेलो इंडिया स्कूल गेम। चलो पढ़ाई में खेल बोलते हैं, चलो खेलते हैं। चलो खेलते हैं।
is that they can define their business by the medium that they operate in. Star had the legacy of being a television company. And one of the challenges was that what do we stand for? What do we want to become as a business? Are we a TV company? In my mind and in our minds, the way we Star was, it's about inspiring a billion imagination. That was the purpose of Star. And therefore, how do we do that? By telling powerful stories. And hence the big challenge was that consumers are not necessarily going to watch TV as they move forward. The younger audiences are moving away from television and watching other screens. So how do you deliver on those screens? And globally, if you look at media companies across the world, had been challenged by this idea for a long, long time. It was a common belief that if you are strong in one medium, you don't transcend to become powerful in the next medium which comes in the few generations later. So print companies never became TV companies, TV companies never became digital companies. And that was a big challenge. And it was taken as a truth that that's something which nobody can actually overcome. At Star, the team decided that that can't be the thing which can prevent us from experimenting and taking a big bet. And Star took a big bet to begin with on something called starsports.com, which was a digital experience to be provided to consumers to engage with those young minds. And I think it was an idea which was born because IPL at that time was bought by Sony, which was running from 2008 to around 2017, 10 years contract. But the digital rights were bought by Times of India Group. And in partnership with YouTube, which is where I work today, they had together come to put it on air digitally on the mobile phone. And somehow it didn't work. The team at Star worked to see that they could take those rights. And for the last 3 years, it ran on Star Network. Interesting thing was that challenge was done to say that we cannot be left behind. Just because we are a TV company, we need to really go and win in the new digital market as well. I think, in my mind, if I look back, and maybe this is being less humble than I should be. I think potentially Star is the only company in the world which has taken the challenge and created on the back of the experiment of starsports.com, Hotstar, and which is the only business which has really broken out 50% of population. And largely sports in India and in a large part globally has been dominated by just men participating in sports or boys participating in sports. And that's something limited to playing and watching both. That had to be challenged. And I think that's a challenge which is far bigger than, I think, any of the other challenges which sports have. And if I can ask you a question, I don't know whether some of you would know, I've given a clue already. Do you know who scored the first double century in an ODI? Sachin Tendulkar. Yeah, sorry? That's right. Belinda Clark. And I think she scored her double century in 1997. And Sachin scored his double century in 2010. So there is a World Cup of cricket, which is what we celebrate India already. 1935, 1970. So Women's World Cup happened in 1973. It's not that the sports authorities didn't start a Women's World Cup. It started in 73. But the idea of sports haven't grown. Societal norms, societal challenges, our own biases have come in the way. And society has not really embraced this change. At Star, the team which ran Star Sports, embraced this idea starting in 2013, investing significant amount of money and investment to support the idea. I think it's important to shape it. It's something which invested behind. They were produced for the first time in the same way that matches were produced for men's tournaments. And the final which happened between India and India. And India lost narrowly that match. It's a very, very close match. Our women played really well. Was the highest viewed any sports tournament in the world at that time. Roughly around 16 crore or 160 million people in India watched that match. But on the back of commitment over the last 4-5 years. But I think it's a journey which is still on. And I feel this is an idea that needs to be embraced by society a lot deeply than has been done so far. Here is the communication which is done to really build that idea into our consciousness.
Then check out my track flick. Check out my long ranger, my neck grip. Check out my uppercut. Check out my takedown. Check out my miles, my speed. Check out my 3000 sleep. Check out my dive. Check out my lap dive, my serve, my bullseye. Check out my black eye. Check out my medals, my Olympic medals. My power. Wanna check me out? Check out my game.
Until our few of us even more strongly a single sport nation, it's fundamentally a country which follows 11 young men playing a game of cricket and no more than that. That's what it has been. And the challenges of the society as athletes, there are people that have different strengths, different capabilities. And we need to have a diversity of sports to engage India. We can't hope that India will become a sporting nation with just one sport. So the big idea was to say, how do we build different new sports in this country? And globally again, not many sports have come in over the last few decades if you look back. The only sport which made an entry in UK was a sport called darts, which people play in pubs, and that became pretty common and famous in Europe, and especially in UK. I think the idea was to really take on a local sport called Kabaddi. And I'll share the excerpts from the first season of Kabaddi, what happened, and then talk about it. Here is what happened in Kabaddi when it got launched in 2014. crore in first year to build Kabaddi and earn 1 crore out of it. So it was really an investment which was a big bet for the future. But more importantly, Star played a role which was very different what any broadcaster had done. They owned the league, they built the stadiums, they partnered with the Kabaddi Federation to make the rules. They ensured that the players, who are all coming from small town rural backgrounds, make them look cool. And the idea of how to present Kabaddi on screen didn't exist because there was no technology. How to put cameras, how to produce it, there was no one knew. But using many of the sports, including rugby, it found out because in Kabaddi the most important thing is touch. How do you capture the touch? Almost a reinvention. And to my mind, it has become the number 2 sport in this country. In places like Andhra Pradesh, where Kabaddi is a sport which has been long played and deeply cherished, at many times during the year, the Kabaddi matches score more than the time that they spend watching cricket. So it's truly become a really, really number 2 sport of this country. But to me, India needs to build many more sports to make it a truly diverse and a truly, I think, a country which can start embracing many more sports than just cricket and Kabaddi. And a lot of investment will be made by many players now in the market to build new sports. So to come back, I feel many thoughts that I talked about, which is around how do we ensure that we inspire, we engage, we include, build the sports for everyone in the society and not just for male audiences and male players. And then build a multi-sport diverse culture is an important thing. But what's the idea, which is really important in all this? And in my mind, that's my learning not only through sports, but across businesses. The most important thing is, do you have the ability to disrupt? And not only disrupt, but disrupt yourself. The world is changing very fast. The world is becoming, I think, with new technology, new innovations across sectors. And if you can disrupt yourself, that's the only time you will really win. And to me, the big example of this was in 2013, when Star launched sports. It was a newbie on the town, but at a big television share. And Star had grown from around 2007-8 to around 25% share of the television market by 2014, when starsports.com was launched. And I think I want to show an ad, but the more important thing in that ad is the last line which Star talks about. And it's good to see that ad to say that as a leader, when you can go and say, I'm willing to be challenged by myself, by talking about that something is better than me, is when you really disrupt yourself. Here is a communication which captures, to me, the thought of how to disrupt yourself.
To my wife, who prefers acting over real action.
Wife, to my lovely wife.
To the cable man who couldn't wait a day for payment.
Just one more day.
To the endless traffic.
Oh, what a day.
To my boss who hates cricket.
I'll kill him one day.
To the rats.
Could there come me nay?
To my father-in-law.
Yes, well,
Sorry. And to the power cuts. I have one thing to say. I have moved on to starsports.com. Get over TV.
Who watch us really, 25% of the country spends time with us every day. Every day, 500 million people used to spend at least 40 to 50 minutes a day with a star character or a star show. To tell them, get over TV, get on digital. And to me, that's what I feel. My learning is when you build any business or any idea as you move forward. But the most important thing for sports and the power of sports is that it can change mindsets. Sports build trust, as I talked about earlier. Trust at a very deep level. You trust those consumers, the consumers trust you. You trust those sport icons, sports people who are really playing for excellence. And a really interesting idea of how you can leverage a sports personality and a sports idea to impact your brand meaningfully. This idea was leveraged by Star Plus to say, how can you leverage cricket and sports icon to communicate the thought of the equality of women or inclusion that I talked about earlier. In my mind, this is one of the best examples I've seen of using that idea of changing mindset. Here is the ad.
को पहन रहा था। तब तो आपने कभी नहीं पूछा कि कोई खास वजह।
नई सोच।
So I think to sum up, I would like to say that sports is personally I'm really passionate about sport. I think as I said earlier, sports will build the foundation for the next leap of India. But more importantly, I'm sure some of you would have heard this concept of the finite game and the infinite game. Simon Sinek had talked about it very deeply. A finite game is something where there are players which are defined. You know who the opponent is. You know what the rules are. And there's a time in which you will know who's the winner or the loser. A football match or a cricket match is that kind of a finite game. An infinite game is when you don't know who your opponent is. There may be somebody today and tomorrow may be a different opponent. You don't know what time frame you're playing for because that match never ends. I personally feel life is an infinite game. Business is an infinite game. When I started at Star, the competition was Z and Sony and Viacom. But towards the years before I moved to Google, the competition was Amazon Prime, Netflix, and many other players. So the competition that you're playing is changing continuously. It's not about winning or losing. It's about, are you in the game? Are you staying put? And when you lose, you learn where can you become better. That's what sports teaches you. So sports teaches you to play the infinite game in life. So in my mind, the business and sports and life are connected by thread of the infinite game. And I would say this is the power that only sports can teach. You learn it as you go through your life, but you learn it many, many years later when you spend decades working. But sports teaches you as you begin playing sports. With that, thank you so much for your time and attention, and all the best.
Sir. Now I next invite our guest of honor today, Mr. Avishesha Bhojani, to address the gathering.
Good afternoon. Thank you, the Honorable Dean. Thank you, Sandeep Goel, for putting this together. And I hope I survived 12. Writing what I wanted to speak took me exactly 12 minutes. But narrating this may distract me a little bit. And my apologies if I get a little distracted because it's a very, very dear subject that I'm talking about. I met Nitin Puri exactly 39 years ago to the day at the Faculty of Management Studies, where I had come to recruit as part of a 3-member team from an agency called Ulka. And it was literally, I can't remember the date, but it was between the first week of February and the second week of February in 1984. The exact date, I don't remember, maybe Sandeep will remember. But Nitin Puri, with his background, and I'd say in that order, his table tennis accolades, he was a national junior table tennis champion, national senior number 4, with his St. Stephen's Eco background, and his cool and connected demeanor. Nitin was, I have not seen Nitin faced ever. It was very easy to make an offer to Nitin. Personally, I was 100% sure that he's going to reject and move on to a multinational, which is a more safer and a more comfortable career. Ulka was, after all, yes, it was a large agency, but it was an Indian agency. And at that point in time, the only sexy Indian agency was Rediffusion, if I may say. Yeah. I started at Ogilvy, that's a different matter, but here I was at Ulka trying to buy. I was totally surprised that Nitin decided to accept the offer from Ulka and he joined. Cut to 11 months later, in April 1985, I was tasked with the creation of a second agency for Ulka called Interface. All of you guys know about startups now, but at that point in time, you didn't talk startups. we were fortunate to have been offered equity. In my case, to set up interface, I was offered 10% equity, which I had to buy. And therefore, when Nitin was the second guy I spoke to, there was no equity for Nitin. I just said, Nitin, if you believe in this, do you want to join? There's no more money, there's uncertainty, we don't know where a second month's salary is going to come from. Would you like to join the ride? And Nitin did not bat an eyelid, and he joined me in interface. So these two events, in a way, define, you can sort of almost trace Nitin's character. And he was consistent. Decisive. It didn't take him more than 2 minutes to take a decision. It's not that let me sleep over it, let me ask 20 people, let me think about it, etc. Decisive, clear on his major objectives and minor objectives. He was very clear about what he wanted, what he didn't want, and he was very, very clear on that. And the third bit was, his decision making was always pragmatic, not flighty. Not what you can't get, but about what he wanted to and where he achieved. Nitin never aspired for anybody else's turf. And talking of turf, Nitin was a very keen golfer, and he and I used to play golf, and ultimately he passed away on the 5th hole of a course that we used to play in my hands. But on positive note, Nitin, his drive wasn't great. It was a 190-yard drive. But, my God, it was accurate. It's almost like he owned that 1 square meter on each of the 18 holes at the Montgomery that he used to frequent and play. The ball would always fall. You could close your eyes and Nitin's ball would fall there. Very, very consistent, very, very predictable. And those are the kinds of things that will give him jollies in life, These traits, Nitin and I call him a friend for 36 years. We've known each other. Out of those 36 years, maybe 22 or 23 years, we worked together. About a decade, he worked in other places. Nitin was always just in time. He'd never be late on the first tee, but never be more than 60 seconds before the tee time. And those of you who know him, it's a different matter that on work front in my 23 years, both he and I could not succeed in getting him to office at exactly the time defined, but it didn't matter. It really didn't matter because he was very, very consistent in what he did. In our 22 years work, there have been maybe 2 or 3 occasions where, he'd had a strong disagreement, and at one occasion he said, I can't work with you anymore. And it was perhaps my irrationality that led him to that, because he was a very, very fine man. So I said, Nitin, what's your plan B? He says, I think I'll go and set up a business. I said, what's your plan B? What if it doesn't work? He says, I'll come back to you and talk to you and ask you for a solution. That was a true gentleman and a true human being, a true friend. His consistency did not change, whether there was a huge opportunity or there was a great adversity. Nitin was Nitin, on that. I'm sure in this room there are a handful of people who've known Nitin far longer than me. Poonam Didi, Radhika, who Nitin and Radhika met at Interface, and a number of his classmates from FMS. I'm not sure if there's any Stephanian classmate of his here, but there are people who've known him far longer than I have, or perhaps more deeply. I think everybody would agree about Nitin. Nitin did not have the traits that sometimes some of us consider as traits that are needed to succeed. Being selfish, being cutthroat, being ruthless. That was not part of his DNA. And did he succeed? My God, he succeeded. As a great human being, as a father, as a husband, as a son, as a brother. Nitin always put the other party before him. His elder daughter, Anandita, was born 20 days before my eldest son. She's had a fantastic career. If YouTube is working, I think she's there. And Anandita went to Northwestern, then Goldman Sachs in New York and London, and now is at Stripe in London. Exceptional career. Their son, Nitin Puri, is just graduating from Harvard Business School now. Again, Wharton, followed by Morgan Stanley and SoftBank Vision Fund. Nitin was extremely proud, as rightfully so, of the achievements of his children, but never once would Nitin tom about it. The conversation, the fact that his children was as accomplished as they are, it's only his close friends who would know. It's because he was understated all along. Radhika has been his life support, and never once have I seen Radhika not supporting Nitin's decision in whatever he did. Not that he took rash decisions, not that he took any brash decisions, but through their life, they were extremely happy. Poonam Didi, I think Nitin did your parents and you very proud. He always ensured that your happiness came before his, and that's an incredible trait. Before I complete, I'd like to do two things. One is to personally congratulate Sandeep Goel for having instituted this Nitin Puri Memorial Lecture. Sandeep, it's a wonderful thing. A lot of people as friends think about it, but I don't know of too many friends who actually end up executing a strategic and a creative solution like this to keep the memory of a friend alive. Congratulations. And I'd like all of us, whether we are here physically or virtually, to take a 30-second break, but with a smile on our face, to celebrate Nitin, a gentleman who led a happy life at his terms. Thank you.
Start with the question and answer session with the audience, and I would like to invite Mr. Sanjay Gupta and Mr. Avishesha Bhojani for the same.
Pursuing my full-time MBA, and I was quite impressed by the efforts done by stars in pursuing the feminine side of games, which has long been ignored. But however, we are also aware of certain controversies that arose, especially in women's athletics. When some athletes were accused of being transgenders and not feminine enough, rather being masculine. So I just wanted to know how in your perspective can we pursue the fact that sports can be made more inclusive to the entire spectrum of genders, so including transsexuals and gender non-specific, non-binary community.
Really big challenge to solve for. And I think it's challenge for sports, it's challenge for every workplace, it's challenge for every part of society that we live in. And it comes from a lot of biases that we have born with, and some could be biases which are not necessarily where you are consciously thinking about it. These are unconscious biases built over a time. So I fundamentally feel that that's an area that we need to address deeply as a society. So as an organization, every organization, be it sports organization, which are federations, or I can talk about Google as an organization, we really spend a lot of time thinking about how to solve for it. How to ensure that we remove those unconscious biases in the people that work with us. Help them understand why those biases are there. because those are not necessarily what you think about deeply, but you still carry it because of muscle memory that you've had over the decades, in some ways more than decades. So I think it's a complex, challenging problem to solve for. There has to be a lot more commitment for everyone to do it. I think as a society we are waking up to it, both in India and globally. And I can only say, looking at what we do at Google, it's a journey which takes its own time to really make a material and a meaningful difference. I do think, will it be problem-free? The question that you raised to say you have heard about things which are not doing right is a part of us maturing and growing up as a society as well. So I don't have an answer, but I think it's a commitment with a lot of effort and a lot of conscious effort to remove those biases the way it is.
We recruited, only 8 have a Y chromosome. All the rest are X's.
Congratulations.
And in your class, I mean, there was time in engineering and DCE. I'm sure there were very few women and limited opportunities. Now almost 40 to 50% of our students are women. So sports, and we're doing a little bit at FMS as well.
No, I think that's a big, big change. Having 40% women, congratulations to you and the entire faculty and the team which works here to do it. I think it makes determined effort to make the difference.
Well, they're just too good. I mean, we recruited just on merit. We men are falling behind. You know, there's normally in our system, because we're a central university, an observer for OBC, SC, ST, all the good, and for women. Do we need it now for men rather than women? That was the question. Okay, who will go next?
So my question is regarding WNBA, which is like a mirror version of NBA for women. So the league has been struggling for viewership in the past few years, and the primary reason for that is that women are not watching it. Like all of the viewership for that league also comes from men. So there has been a lot of effort to getting women involved in playing sports. But what about making them active viewers and getting them interested in sports in the first place?
Talk from India point of view. WNBA, I'm sure you're talking about from a US perspective. That there, the viewership is not there. I don't know. But in India, we see that there is a challenge on overall viewership beyond cricket. And it needs a lot of investment before the viewership turns. Because it takes time for people to just understand and enjoy the sport and know the sport well. So there is a lot of grassroots work needs to get done for kids in the country to start understanding the sports a lot better. So I feel it's a few years journey. It's not a 1 year, 2 year journey. I feel investment into sports is at least a decade journey, if not more. And I think these efforts have to continue. I do think, let's say when Star had started, and I must say this is what I'm talking, I'm with Google right now, so I'm talking, and thank you to Star for really allowing me to have this conversation also. But Star had invested a lot of effort, let's say on Kabaddi, to start a women's league in a small basis to begin with, because there are not even women players to begin with. So they started and said, let's do a few days of sports. And I'm sure they're investing to continuously build that moving forward. So it's going to be a slow, but I think it's a determined journey that people need to take. But more importantly, go to the grassroots and work with children to participate and play before we get the engagement and viewership. That comes later.
Student at FMS. So you briefly talked about being decisive. I think we even talked about how being decisive was a characteristic of Mr. Nitin Puri as well. So I wanted to understand from your perspective, how do we build that acumen to be more decisive as we venture into a career in business?
Don't wait for a better thing to happen. I've personally led my life defining that sure, you'll make a few wrong calls, but as long as you make there's no currency more valuable than time. I've lived the last 35 years in a city-state where literally the ruler of that city, Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid, the best definition I can give to him is a man who's seen tomorrow. So Dubai has succeeded in spite of all the odds. Has it failed? It's failed on a lot of things, a lot of times. But even the last time when COVID hit, it was an opportunity for the whole world. But clearly, in the span of the last 24 months, it's become the most livable city. So decisiveness, I think, is a key trait to success. Whatever you define as success, material success is not just the yardstick of success. It is and it is not. It's your personal priority. I hope I've given you some clarity.
My name is Orko. I'm a second year student full-time. So my question is to you, Sanjay sir. So two parts of your lecture really caught my eye. One was diversifying beyond a one-sport nation, and second was the rarity of a new sport coming up, and that is why making kabaddi was a huge thing. So one thing that's been coming up in India nowadays is esports. And while Google has made an investment of 120 million back in 2018 in China, such an investment has not been seen in India. So I wanted to know what's sort of Google India's perspective on that market in India.
On esports, more about it. But I do think it's an area which is growing very fast and needs investment on. Will Google invest more money? That's a question. I don't know right now.
Yes, not only investment part, but also spreading awareness and then creating a market for it. Not just making use of the current market that's there, but growing the market and then sort of reaping the benefits out of it.
I think one of the big things from a Google point of view is, if you look at the surface of YouTube, which is where I think a large number of people watch it, and that's the way to really build any idea, because it builds awareness deeply in the community. And it surfaces automatically through personalization, the content that people are looking for. So to me, that's the area that works really well from a YouTube perspective. But if the idea of investment into technology and people, we haven't made up our mind as to whether we'll do more in India right now. But I do think that's an area which is set to explode. As you said, in a lot of Southeast Asian markets, it's exploding right now, including in India it is going. But it needs still some quality investments to happen for the future to grow more. So no commitment on whether we will invest more or not right now.
Right, that answers my question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, shall we take one last question? Last but not the least, we'll go.
I want to add on to a question asked by my fellow friend. So, as you mentioned that Nitin sir always put the other party before him. And as we grow up and as we grow old and we enter into the race of making ourselves a name, we get competitive, we get into that cutthroat race. So I just wanted sir to help us understand how can we acquire that trait, because I think it's more than important at this stage to all of us to have that.
Very, very good question. Let me try and at least give you my perspective. In the race for excellence, there's no finish line. So you're not running against somebody else. You're running against yourself. And you need to keep that in mind. And therefore, the locus of control has to be internal and not external. So a lot of negative energy comes out of trying to look back or look ahead. Who's ahead of you, who's behind you? That's a waste of time in my opinion. Benchmark yourself, see what you want, and be happy with what you get, and happier if you are able to overachieve to your objective. And trust me, it's a much more joyful process then. Thank you.
That's such a brilliant question, Sanjay.
I think as I was saying earlier, life is an infinite game. It's not a finite game. And I agree with you fully that it's a really, at least in my mind, it's important to, as Mr. Bhojani said, that you need to have the center of gravity within you and not outside. And I think when I was passing out of college, your age, the thing that most worried almost all of us, who's getting day 0 job, day 1 job, day 2 job, that troubles you so much at that time. And I realized 30 years later that actually it didn't matter at all. To be honest, I'd like to quote an example. There is a batchmate of mine, I won't name him. He didn't get a job on day 0, day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. I was in IIM Calcutta, day 5. There was one last company which came. Because there was no one else, he went and joined that company. He was the first CEO from the batch that I passed out from. So in my mind, the factors that we look for, or the signals that we look for are normally outside of us, not internal. So as Mr. Bhojani said, keep this, it's your race against you. Can you be better tomorrow? even when you lose. And life is not a game which you're winning tomorrow. Life is a game which you're running to keep becoming better and better. And I think one of you asked the question, in my mind, the two values which are most important are, there has to be something which drives you, or the purpose, which each one of us will have our own view of what that purpose for me as an individual or a professional is. And the second thing I would say is around courage. Have the courage to go down that path, even others are not doing. And so to be purpose and courage at least has been my learning of what can anchor you to yourself and help you chart your own journey.
I think that's an absolutely great game, and then life, the infinite game. And as Krishna said, life is a leela, it's a sport. So benchmark against yourself. The Britannic Upanishad begins, there's a shlok which begins with Purnamada. It essentially translates everything is infinite. From the infinite, take out the infinite, what remains is the infinite. So to regard ourselves as finite beings, that is the central insight of this nation. You change bodies as you change clothes. Nitin is here, Nitin is eternal. We are all eternal and we all one at the Ved. All this is sport. Economics began, when I read economics, I'm an economics student, they said economize. In other words, there's scarcity. And therefore you need to allocate resources to their best use. The problem today is abundance. 2,400 calories or whatever. Eat a little and God is very unkind. 2 rasgulla kha lo, itna calorie ho gaya. Arey bhai, to gym jao. Itna social media, economize. My iPad now tells me you exceeded your limit. The problem today, all our diseases are disease of abundance. All our mental unrest is out of abundance. Right? Nanda Nilekani has written a book called Bitfulness. Limit your use of social media. Right? So it's always been infinite. Needs are limited, wants are unlimited. As Gandhi said, there's enough in the world for everybody's need. There is not enough for everybody's greed. Global warming, non-sustainability, greed, then it's the end of us all. But if we are happy with what we have, we are happy with seeing ourselves in each other, because at the level of consciousness, yours and mine are exactly the same. Our bodies might slightly look different. And so is Nitin here. So, infinite game, and all glory to the infinite. And so many thanks to all of you to organize this, and special thanks to Professor Singla, who helped bring this all together. And all the students, although I must say the -5 attendance did help. I must share that secret. But nevertheless, we will forgive them for that. They are young, and they have infinite potential. So thank you. Ma'am would like to say something. Thank you so much.
Hi, good evening everyone. I'm really honored and very proud to participate in this memorial, which is going to keep Nitin's memory alive, and a very, very special thanks to Sandeep, who's initiated the whole thing. It was his idea, he's followed it through. It's absolutely incredible, and it means a lot. It's touched both me and our kids. It's really something very, very special, and I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And thank you to Avi to fly down all the way from Dubai just for a day for this, to participate. Thank you, Sanjay, and to the Dean, and to Professor Singla, and all my friends and family who are here to support this. And my children unfortunately couldn't be here, but I'd just like to share something that my husband always said to my children. He always said, be good, never compromise on your integrity, and that's what I'd like to say to all of you. Make your parents proud, make your institute proud. You're in a great place, and I wish you all the very best. Thank you.
To be very honest, I have a great feeling of fulfillment that this lecture has finally worked out. It's been in the making for 3 years. But for it to happen today and happen with such phenomenal success is something I am infinitely proud of. In my vote of thanks, first and foremost, all of you have been a fabulous audience, so a big round of applause for you. A very, 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 very big thank you to my friend Sanjay Gupta for having spared time from his very busy schedule and to have made a really, really outstanding presentation. Thank you, Sanjay. Can I come with you? Radhika already said it. Avi has taken time off. He flew in this morning. As soon as he finished today's lecture, he's going to be flying back to Dubai. Says volumes for the man. Thank you again, Avi, for sparing time to be with us. More importantly, for recounting all of the fabulous time that you had with us. Thank you, sir.
We have a memento of Sandeep ji, and thank you so much.
I have to do duty now to thank an absolutely fabulous person I have met today, which is the Honorable Dean. One big round of applause. There's one person in this entire auditorium who requires to be given a standing ovation, and that is Professor M.L. Singla. Earlier, I have had the proud privilege of knowing Professor Singla for more than 40 years now. He was a year senior to me at FMS. So he graduated in 83, I graduated in 84. More importantly, I came back to do my PhD under Dr. Singla and really, really enjoyed the entire process of doing the PhD more than the PhD itself. Thank you, sir. A very big thank you now to my friends from the MSA. So a big round of applause for your team from the MSA, the General Secretary first, and then I will speak about a very special individual a little later. So this is my friend for you. This young gentleman is special. There is a very, very, very big round of applause you need to give. The entire organization of this lecture has been single-handedly handled by him. So the lecture and hopefully the tea that we will now follow this up with is all courtesy Nimanyu. Thank you, my friend. A big thank you to Radhika and to Nitin's sister Poonam for being with us here today. And now, most importantly, I am going to invite on stage some very, very, very special people. And all of them are my classmates from the batch of 84, starting with Anshu Prakash. Please come up. Naveen Saraswat, Sanjay Gupta, Ashish Bhatia, Anupam Prakash. All of them are my batchmates from the batch of 84, and they have taken time out to be here today, and I am sure all of you will give them a big round of applause.
Inaugural Nitin Puri Memorial Lecture. Today's event was made possible here with the presence of all of you. Thank you so much for being here. I would like to extend my thanks to Dr. Sandeep Goyal, for whom this event has been a priority since the very start. Ms. Sadhika Puri for gracing us with her precious presence today. Our keynote speaker for the evening, Mr. Sanjay Gupta, for his valuable time and kind words for us today. And our guest of honor, Mr. Avishesha, Bhojani, for extending his intricately valuable thoughts out to us this evening. I would also like to thank Vallabhbhai Patel's auditorium for granting us the space to conduct this memorable evening. Lastly, I thank our faculties and my peers from FMS for being here with us today in making sure this inaugural of many events is a success. Thank you so much. I would also request the guests to move for the interactive IT session. Thank you.